one of the most important things in life is credit, and it's taught nowhere throughout school. They don't teach you about money, none of that. And there's a reason why.
So what we've been using and what become a norm, right, is allowing the companies to penalize us even though that they're not lawfully correct.
But now you're taxed again to buy food, to buy gas, to buy a home. Everything else you're taxed on. You even get taxed when you die.
There's people that's dealing with delinquencies, late payments, right? And it's setting them up for this financial cycle of desperation and trauma that becomes very hard to get out of.
Correct. The question now becomes, are you going to learn the rules so you can change the game, or are you just going to be a victim sitting in the bleachers complaining about everything else?
Peace, family. It's 19 Keys, and you watching 19 Minutes. I was reading this book. It's about the proper handling of people, and it speaks on the 4 basic problems: health, finances, domestic affairs, and affairs of the heart. And when I look at my community specifically, we typically don't have any of these 4 basic problems together. Our health is a huge issue. Right? And health is the first correlation of data when you look at somebody's wealth, which directly goes to finances. I always talked about us being a pissed off people, and that is poverty-induced stress disorder. When you grow up without finances, right, and you grow up without those opportunities, now you end up having a higher risk for disease and mental challenges as you grow older. And without the proper finances to do something about it, this just becomes a cycle for you, right? Without having that ability to emotionally regulate yourself and grow up in a household where your needs are taken care of, right? Your matters of the heart never get fulfilled, and you never learn how to regulate and manage yourself, right, as a human being, so that you can go about the world gathering respect, building wealth, gaining power, and being part of a ruling class. We live in America where, yes, it is the land of a lot of negative things in the history that does exist, but it also is a land of opportunity, but only for those who have a focused mind, right? And for those who understand the land that they're in. The brother that I'm bringing up today, I think, is somebody who has spent time studying and understanding the land. And I believe he is somebody that can help us deal with some of these basic problems that we have, right? So that we can move past where we currently are and get to a future that we can be proud of. So the next generation is doing something completely different, not focusing on the challenges of the past. The good brother that I have today is somebody that can help you get your mind and your credit right. They can teach you about the law in the sense of finances so that you can learn how to move throughout this land. And that impediment that you have, which is really just ignorance and a lack of understanding your challenges, will now be completely out of your way. I like finding interesting people across the planet Earth who know things that I don't know, so I can sit across for them and learn. And today we have none other than Daraine Delevante. Come on through, man.
All right, let's get it. Let's get it. What's going on, King? How
What's
you doing?
happening with you, man?
It's a pleasure to be here, bro.
Blessings. I'm gonna take the glasses off early, man. We're gonna get started.
All right.
So, matter of fact, let me bring this back up. So I listed out our main basic problems. And I want to ask you, starting off, which one do you think is our biggest concern?
All right. So we need to comprehend what the United States is first, because a lot of people believe that it's a country, and it's not. It's a business.
Yes, sir.
Right? 28 USC 3002, number 15, United States, a federal corporation. We need to get that first and know that, hey, this place operates as a business, so we need to adjust ourselves accordingly. right? So corporations are bound by bylaws, rules, regulations. These are what the constitutions are. These are what the federal laws are. These are what consumer laws are.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we as a people educate ourselves on something that we were never taught in school? Credit is one of the most important thing in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Like they say, America is backed by full faith and credit
Mm-hmm.
of the United States people. Well, that credit comes from somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we overlook that part.
Right.
And no one tells us that it's actually a federal corporation. So now, as we navigate through life, one of the most important things in life is credit, and it's taught nowhere throughout school.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach you about money, none of that. And there's a reason why. People also think that the president runs the country. The bankers do. They got that power back in 1913 when that creature came from Jekyll Island called the Federal Reserve. And most people don't know that if the banking system controls all the money, they care not what the leaders do. So, okay, how do we as a people recognize this is the game? Can't change the game. The game is already being played. The question now becomes, are you going to learn the rules so you can join the game, or are you just going to be a victim sitting in the bleachers complaining about everything else? So when I came from Jamaica, I decided that enough was enough. So a little bit about me. So I went straight off.
Yeah, you went. you just dive straight in real quick.
So let me introduce myself.
We got back some things up real quick. Tell the people who you are and tell them why. What's the reason why you got into understanding and studying this information?
I got tired of being told no. I don't like being told no. It's how can I figure this out? So I'm Jamaican, born in Jamaica, lived there for 20 years. I took a chance on myself at 19 years old. Funny year, 19.
Yes, sir.
But at 19 years old, I was going to school. I was going to med school, right? So I was the first out of my family to go to University of the West Indies, right? It would be the equivalent for us for what your guys is. Harvard is here, right? I realized that right now it's about 3 to 4 million per year to study medicine in Jamaica. My mom's a single mom, 5 kids, police. She don't have that type of money. At 19 years old, I decided that I was my greatest investment and I'm going to take a chance on me. So I left everything I knew to come to America. And that's the first time I ever experienced what cold is. Because I went to New Hampshire, Jamaica, New Hampshire, polar opposites, right? And this is where culture shock came in. Slapped me right in the face. Dude, you're in a foreign country. You have no family here. This is it. You're either going to make it or you're not. So working at Dairy Queen, making $7.25, I realized that I could use what I'm making now to support my family back home. So I don't know about much of you that don't have family overseas, but when you're here and your family is back home, you kind of become the lifeline, not just for you, but your entire family. Because what you're making, you're sending back.
What part of Jamaica are you from?
Manchester, right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? So that made a difference. So I learned a sense of responsibility and commitment early at 19. So fast forward now, joining the military, got my citizenship. I couldn't get a job that I wanted in the military because I didn't have credit. That's when it first appeared. Then I tried getting my first car, denied, needed a cosigner. Didn't know what a cosigner was, asked my friend to be a cosigner. And a lot of us are we're good people. So we have other people say, I'm going to co-sign for you, but that's one of the worst things you can do for someone because your financial responsibility and obligations becomes theirs, unknowing to you. So if I skip out on that, my friend would be held responsible. So I'm paying for a used Nissan Altima, 75,000 miles, 18.9% interest rate. Ridiculous. Payments are $550, new driver in New York, insurance $300. So for $900, I was driving a used Nissan Altima. Bad credit is the most expensive life you will ever live. So fast forward, I started learning about this credit stuff, and I'm like, yo, this stuff is good. And when I deployed, one of my biggest challenges when I deployed was I had a E7 came up to me and told me that I couldn't read. Can you imagine this?
You said an
2020.
E7?
Yes, an E7. That's a sergeant first class. Told me I could not read. Because during 2019, 2020, 2021, I was working on my mind, my body. I was working on my personal development and my financial education. So that whole year of being deployed, I read 140 books. I was consuming 8 to 12 books per month, right? Because I radically needed a change, and I knew that I had to become the change that I wanted. Ain't nobody coming to save me. I had to be my own Calvary. So while I was working, I was told I couldn't read. And I said this: if you think for a minute I'm going to stop reading, pack me up and send me home. So my thing to your audience is this: how much do you really believe in yourself? Or how committed are you to your own success to risk everything, your country, being labeled, what's the word, insubordinate, being ridiculed by everybody that I deployed with? Because when everybody was outside working out, fraternizing, and getting their groove on and smoking hookah, I was locked in my room reading. And now everybody else deployed, they're broke, busted, and disgusted. I'm the one that's financially free. But because we live in a world under a microscope where everybody believes that someone else's approval of them should be the reality that they should live into, I took a different approach. I focused on me for a whole year, building, developing myself. And that's what led to me finding credit. Now, credit, think of credit like a pizza. There's different aspects of credit.
Hold on, before we get to the credit part, I want to dive a little more into Jamaica.
Talk to me.
Because you sound like Marcus Garvey. Now, I spent some time out in Jamaica.
Where?
It start with a P.
Portland.
Portland, yeah.
Our Port Royal is.
It was Portland. So I was out there probably for like a month or so. And I had a good time to like visit the island. I went to go visit the, what they call the Bobo Shanti.
Yeah, Bobo Shanti, the Rastas.
Yeah, the Rastas. So I went up there to go visit them in the hills, right? We had, we said prayer together. I went and was able to film some of, their proceedings and things of that nature. And I was on this tour. And the tour it was a learning tour for me. I was going to Jamaica, Africa. I had just finished the US tour, right? And then I went to the UK. So I went to the Four Corners, right? And my goal was to look at what are all the problems, right? And, therefore I can get a multidimensional perspective versus I'm American, I see things this way. But when you go to different places and you travel, what you realize is that each people have one thing and they're mixing the next, right? So like the Bobo Shanti, they have some sovereign land up there, but they don't particularly know business and credit and structure and law and how to actually keep people there, right? Because their retention rate was very low. But the beauty of it is that the wealth and the prosperity of Jamaica exists in the land itself.
Correct.
Right? But it's just not enough cultivation, right, of the land by the people. And it's an unfortunate reality because Marcus Garvey, was such a powerful entrepreneur, right? And he had such a powerful vision for the world at a time that was way ahead of his time, way ahead of his time. He trying to create steamships and candy shops and ice cream stores and newspapers and all sort of different things. And unfortunately, that mindset is not what prevails over the average person, right? In America, right, we know Marcus Garvey, we know Malcolm X. Most people don't know the militancy of Marcus Garvey in a sense that they like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do, that's what I'm gonna be, and it's something that you aspire, right? Haile Selassie is huge out there, right? Emmanuel, the Holy Prophet Emmanuel. And then, I went up to go visit the Maroons and Nanny Maroon. I was through there.
You was definitely, all right.
I went to go get me some coffee in the mountains. You
went
know
to
what
the
I mean?
Blue Mountain?
Yeah, I went to the Blue Mountains. That was scary at night. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't know we made a wrong turn. I didn't know if I was gonna be able to get back out.
No, I think you'd be fine. I think for a person like you and the way you are, I don't think the environment matters because you're a genuinely positive person.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't matter which turn you make. By what you can offer
Yeah.
in terms of your intellect, in terms of just helping people, I don't think you have to worry anywhere you are, but I
Yeah.
think you'll be good.
So let me ask you though, because what I wanted to get to is, being in Jamaica and coming from Jamaica, who were your inspirations, right? Because Jamaica actually has a lot of heroes. Most people don't know Nanny and Maroons, right? They don't know she fought a 19-year war and won. You know what I'm saying?
People are not committed. So
yeah, they don't know she the reason that the queen had to back off. You feel me? And the only power that they had over the land is if somebody committed, murder, right? But beyond that, they have their sovereignty right up there, particularly because of her. And the unsung heroes is the reason we don't get to the mentality to save ourselves.
You bring up some really good points. So growing up in Jamaica, you see that part? His story. It has changed. They've commercialized the hero's story. So we only hear about the deeds that they do, but they don't get into the real part of the history. So growing up, any of the heroes, I didn't look to any of the heroes as my hero because they didn't teach us much. And in Jamaica, there's two types of education. You have your money type of education, or you don't have your money type of education. Remember, single mom, 5 kids. So you can tell I was on the part where we didn't have enough money, and you didn't realize you were poor until you got around rich people, right? So that part of the culture is not being highlighted properly. And with the new generation, bro, I'm telling you, these new generation, they're different. I don't know what's going on with the new generation, but there's a abundance of knowledge that's about to be lost very, very soon in the very near future, because the new generation of kids that's becoming adults, they only care about the cars, they only care about the jewelry, they only care about the club life. People that were grounded, or people that are grounded, they don't want to listen to these people anymore because what they're saying is all information. So there's a terminology that they use and they call chop the line. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that when you're in Jamaica, right? So it's basically
if I did, I couldn't understand.
So basically it's about scamming, right? It's the hottest thing right now. It's fast money. No one believes in working for anything anymore. This is a microwave fix. We're in the era now where people want microwave fix. It's the same thing with credit. You'll have somebody that messed their credit up over 10 years, but you should repair the whole thing in 30 days. It doesn't work like that. So we've been introduced through social media to a microwave society where the attention span now for people to learn is less than 5 seconds, which is less than a goldfish. And that is troublesome because these are the next set of leaders, are the next set of people that's going to lead. And with that information missing, it's going to become a problem because now we find out that one, people are not problem solution orientated anymore. It's hard. I can't figure it out. Help. It's not, okay, this thing is hard, but why is this the way it is? Let me go and figure it out. It's easy to throw your hands up and blame it on somebody or have somebody else fix that problem. But the urge to solve the problems are not there anymore. And Jamaica is being developed. The Chinese have moved in, the Indians have moved in, but Jamaicans want to move out. And I was thinking about this and I was like, if the Chinese are coming in and the Indians are coming in, why are people leaving? But it goes back to education, financial literacy, and not knowing about the land. I just came from Jamaica about 3 weeks ago, right? October, I started a project. I was building a car wash, a mini mart, a bar, and a restaurant. I got it done in like 3 months, right? A lot of people were telling me I shouldn't have done it because I put so much money in it. Why did I do that? Well, why would I not want to invest in my own country? Why would I want other races that people weren't even born in my country to become billionaires and multi-billionaires in my country, but I'm in another country working a 9 to 5?
People like complaining because what will happen is people, gentrification, right, is not a necessarily bad thing. It's the fact that we don't do it ourselves.
I agree with you.
Right? So, it's like you got a dirty house and somebody else come clean it up. And you're like, why you enter my house and clean it up? Well, why didn't you? Now it's better and it's worth more. Right? And it happens to our neighborhoods and it increases the value. Right? But same thing with Jamaica, any of these countries, you're going to be mad when you see a foreigner, right, in your country running things, right, talking about they Rastafarian, and you go be on the internet complaining, yet why didn't you do the same thing? If they see the value in your land, why don't you see it? And it goes back to that thing, right?
That's why
of us understanding our self-worth, understanding our value, having that connection to our lineage. And that's why I wanted to start off talking about Jamaica first, because I believe there's a lack of, pride in our heritage and who we are. And I think that disconnection doesn't allow us to get to consumer law, doesn't allow us to get to legalese, doesn't allow us to understand like credit and things of that nature. Like, what are you building for? Right? But you have to understand your past and understand the reason that you want to move forward in the first place. Right? So I want people to think about connecting to their story and cementing it. And once you have this sense of identity, right? Now you start to take pride. There's no way I could be broke or poor or waiting on the Savior. There's no way I could let somebody else do what I should be doing for myself. There's no way he could be giving me information that can change my life and I don't learn it and develop myself and challenge myself to grow so that I can be one out here winning, right? For my family. Right? And break the curses that come with my family. That's a certain level of pride that comes to a man or woman that have a level of self-knowledge and self-awareness and that self-examination.
So, dude, you hit all the points. I believe, and this is just my belief, if you are going to be successful, start cleaning up your own house first. I saw the Chinese moving in. I saw the Indians move in. I went back because obviously there's something there that they're seeing that most people aren't seeing. So what I'm doing now, I'm conversating with the Chinese, right? I'm conversating with the Indians. What's going on? Well, we're looking to do this development. We're looking to do this, and this. How can I be a part of that? Until I got connection with this Chinese lady that owns one of the biggest shipping companies in Jamaica. But if I didn't realize what was going on in my own house, I couldn't have went back and started networking. So now I'm knowing the moves. Robert Kiyosaki speaks about being on the outside and being on the inside.
Right.
The insider conversations hits different. You know what's going to happen before anybody else. So when I go back home, I make networking a part of my duty, because I need to know what's going on next. And trust me, my Chinese plug, she's plugged in all the way.
Man, I think it's interesting. I think Freedom, when I had him on, he's currently running for president of Ghana, right? And he was on the platform and he was speaking similar to that same concept. Like, you can get mad at the foreigners who come to the land, right? But they have a plan for the land that you don't, right? And instead of complaining, I'm going to learn, right? And it's not that I'm not particularly mad at them for coming and having a plan. Is that, they have to work with me, right? Number one, right? And they don't get to control things. I can get to control things. Yeah, you can benefit off the land. You can make some money here, right? But it has to be in partnership with somebody that's from there. And, certain places have that type of structure set up. Certain islands have that, where there's no way that you can come in and just automatically buy up land and take up space, right? I think they used to do that in Dubai. Like, you had to partner with a citizen in Dubai, right? In order for you to come up in there and just start creating businesses. I believe they changed it now. But if you think about it, it's like, yeah, if somebody wants to come into your neighborhood, they should come with somebody and partner with somebody. So when you see development, you know that wealth is being spread. And I think that, once we take that kind of pride and we have those sort of systems set up, doesn't matter when we see development, doesn't matter who come, because the law of the land, right, will force everybody to grow and develop at the same time. Peace family, 19 keys tapping in. Let me ask you a question. How is your credit? It really represents your habits and the way that you move throughout this world and your understanding of the game. What is the game? It's a game of rules, of secrets, of how to move through private, through public. It's a game to how to navigate the ins and outs so that you can have financial success. So I want to be at the Credit Summit with Daraine Delevante in October from 11th to the 13th. And I need you to pull up because I want you to play the game. As you start learning how to use the credit, you start learning how to build wealth. The game was played for those who understand it. Come through, understand it. And also make sure that you join High Level Club. We're going to have Daraine, which is one of the best credit people out there that can give you the ins and outs of the game, speaking to our community for free. Make sure that you comment credit below so that you can join. And I'll see you in Atlanta. Peace to the family. Get your credit right so you can get your life right.
Are we low level or high level?
So now I want to get into all the things we don't know, right? And I want to start with, the word consumer and consumer law, right? To understand it a little deeply, because most people, they hear consumer law, but there's definition and then there's connotation, right? Connotation, you just think about the emotion connected to it, everything you heard about it, but not what it actually means. So what is consumer law?
All right.
And how can a person, view themselves as a consumer as an empowerment thing?
All right. So the word consumer, people can take it two ways, right? They can take it as just consuming everything, or being the person that is protected by laws that a consumer should enforce, right? So consumer laws are laws, federal laws put in place by the government to protect consumers from business practices that are just not ethical, from corruption, from bad business, interstate commerce, stuff like that. When it comes to the consumer law aspect of it now, it's called consumer law for a reason, meaning it's your law. It's my law. It's consumer law. So the system that is one of the biggest systems in America, which is credit, which feeds all the banks. First of all, we need to comprehend that this wasn't designed for us, right? People that make laws to benefit themselves. So we can complain about it and did what grandma did, cut up all the credit cards, throw them in the garbage, only use it for groceries, or we could really learn what the Robert Kiyosaki's are doing, the Grant Cardones are doing, these mega multi-millionaires, the Musk, what are they doing with credit? Learn the game and become a part of it instead of complaining. So what I discovered was this. Congress has laws, and they put laws in place that outline specific things that banks, financial institutions, car dealerships, and different institutions, even government institutions, must abide by. The reasons why a lot of these companies get away with so much, because there's no one apart from the FTC and the CFPB, which is the Federal Trade Commission, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, that's holding them accountable. And if the complaints are enough, the CFPB, they're not going to look into it. So when it comes to the regular person, how do you defend yourself? By education, because a consumer that is educated is a dangerous consumer. No one will be able to take advantage of you. And that's the difference between the Daraine Delevante now that can get anything versus the one that got denied driving around a 2007 Nissan Altima with 75,000 miles on it. So the first thing Congress tells us is that the Consumer Report, 15 U.S.C. 1681, right? This is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This law governs how the consumer reporting agencies report information or furnish information. So let me ask you a question. When you hear Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, Innovis, SageStream, Check Systems, ARS, what comes to mind? What's the first word that comes to your mind?
Credit.
All right. Most people call them what? Credit bureau. I'm sure you've heard the word before, right? All right. What do we know about the word bureau?
FBI.
Government, right? So there's a term, it's called double language, where you say something, but it means something else. So they've adopted a word called credit bureau. Now, in the Fair Credit Reporting Act, 15 U.S.C. 1681A, on the definitions and rules of construct, there is no such thing as a credit bureau. It does not exist.
Private companies.
Right? They're private companies, but the correct name. See, when we comprehend names and definitions, we know now how to move accordingly. But when we give power to an entity that doesn't have that power, subconsciously, it cripples us. So when Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax come back with verified, a lot of people are not going to fight it because they're thinking credit bureau, government agency. Well, that's a lie. But they're not going to call themselves government agency. They put a word out there and they put so much money behind the marketing that people believe they're government institutions. So if you read the Fair Credit Reporting Act, 15 USC 1681, it's going to tell you under definition, under fairness and accuracy of the consumer report, that these entities assumed a vital role. They weren't given a role. They enabled themselves to basically be the kings of this industry called consumer reporting, right? And one of the things Congress also said,
Consumer reporting.
right? So the name, the right name for them is a consumer reporting agency. That is their name. So once we start addressing them by their name, knowing their definition, we know now that they're just another company like Wells Fargo, like Bank of America, but they just mine data. But because they mine data, it's one of the biggest industry. Because if we can compile data on your habits, your financial habits, and then banks use this information to decide if they're going to lend to you or not, or extend that line of credit to you, they have control. So now if the information is inaccurate, they're still selling the reports anyway. It doesn't matter if it's accurate or not, they're still selling it. And the Fair Credit Reporting Act was put in place to make sure that they furnish correct information. But they don't do it. All right, look at the numbers. America has 333 million people, right? About 200 million have a consumer report. So you're talking about Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax maintaining over 200 million files. Where are they going to get the resources to ensure that these profiles are accurate? They don't have the resources. So the consumer law is for the consumer to review their reports. If they see something that is inaccurate, it is a consumer's responsibility to make them know that, hey, this information is inaccurate. It needs to be deleted. But because that part of the education is out, people don't know how to properly dispute, and that's what's causing the issue.
So we're
The
just
issue is a
going
dispute
off
issue.
of credit scores from credit bureaus that for the most part, they're not the law of the land, right? But when people see themselves through the credit scores from private agencies that just created companies,
All right, I'm glad you
not
asked.
knowing they have the ability to challenge that because they have all sort of rights.
All right, I'm going to pull something up for you. See, when an underwriter looks at your credit, I'm going to tell you exactly what they're looking for. So if we go to, you can follow up too. So we're going to go to 15 USC 1681, right? And when we go to 15 USC 1681, it brings us to congressional findings and statement of purpose. Now, when we go here, right, listen to what they say. So we're at 15 USC 1681, A, accuracy and fairness of the credit report. But then when we go down to number 2, right, it says an elaborate mechanism has been developed, right? Which government agency would call their own agency an elaborate mechanism? None, right? An elaborate mechanism has been developed for investigating, evaluating the credit worthiness, credit standing, credit capacity, character, and general reputation of consumers. So when an underwriter sees your report, they're looking at your credit worthiness, your credit standing, your credit capacity, your character, your general reputation. These are the things they're seeing. But you can't have the conversation with them. You're not in the room. They're going off of what they see in a report. Who's reporting the information? Equifax, TransUnion, Experian. But then we have a silent player in the game, FICO, Fair Isaacs Corporation. That's where the FICO scores are from. So the FICO scores are based off of information on your profile. So what FICO did was they created an algorithm that takes consumer report information, and based on a scale of 300 to 850, it gives you 550 points. The information can be positive, it moves you closer towards 850. If it's negative, it moves you closer to 300, right? So this created another booming part of a market called the subprime market. And remind me, we're going to get into the subprime because this is an area where a lot of people don't comprehend, and it's where a lot of our black and brown people are, in the subprime region, right? So between 300 and 850, we have 550 points, right? This 550 points now is broken down into 5 categories. There's payment history, utilization, the age of your credit, new credit, and mixture of credit. A credit score will control your life. It will control where you live, the type of car you drive, where your kids go to school, where you lay your head to rest, how you travel. A credit score will affect your life, right? So when I comprehended this, I said, if I master how to put me anywhere closer to 850, then I really cracked the code to the game.
So how did you use the knowledge of consumer law, right, to change your life? I want to know, like, what was the application, right?
Right.
And give me the first time you used it first. What was the first time you used it?
First time I used consumer law was in 2021, right? When I had late payments. And I figured out that, have you ever heard of a goodwill letter before? Trash, total trash, throw it in the garbage. You will never need it again. Late payments only exist because you let it exist. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to say, Daraine, shut up. What are you talking about? A late payment can only be furnished under a specific condition. If you're 30 days late, that has nothing to do with it. In order for a creditor to treat a payment as late, there's specific conditions that must be met, right? So if you follow me over to 15 USC 1662B, right? And we're going to go to timing of payments, 1666B, timing of payments. It's going to tell you that, and I want to use the accurate quote here. I'm going to show you guys how you get rid of late payments. This was my first application. So 1666B, and it says, timing of payments. A creditor may not treat a payment on a credit card account under an open-end consumer credit plan as late for any purpose unless. So they cannot treat a payment as late unless. Unless simply means they must do these things before they can treat the payment as late, right?
What are the conditions?
Correct. So the conditions are, unless the creditor has adopted reasonable procedures designed to ensure that each periodic statement, including information required by Section 1637B of this title, is mailed or delivered to the consumer not later than 21 days before the payment due date. Now, Congress just gave us the conditions that a late payment exists. It's the only condition. So when you're disputing a late payment, you're not saying, oh, I was never late. That's not what the law just said. It says that a late payment can only exist when this thing happens. So what you want to do now is request the documents. So I'm requesting the statement, the periodic statement, and the notices from 1637B, and I want proof that it was delivered 21 days or less before the payment due date. It's the only condition for a late payment to exist. So when I request it and you can produce it, how are you furnishing a late payment? That now becomes inaccurate reporting. So I go to the creditor with that, but at the same time, 15 USC 1681 EB, a consumer reporting agency must have reasonable procedures to ensure that the consumer reports have maximum possible accuracy. Well, what does accuracy mean? All values correct. So if the standard for furnishing a consumer report means everything must be correct, if you're furnishing a late payment, it also means you, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian, you must have the proof that the statement, the periodic statement, along with the disclosures from 1637B, was mailed or delivered 21 days before the payment due date. So now I'm asking for that documentation. They never have it. They don't have it. So now we have a violation.
Because it would be too much work, number one, to get done.
200 million files.
Yeah.
How? So we're not saying that the payment wasn't late. I don't care if your payment was late. Are they reporting the information the way the law says they're supposed to?
So you're saying that the system of late payments, right, is the first issue, because someone takes this information and say, well, if a person is late on a payment, right, then they should be penalized. But you're saying that the penalties are illegal because it doesn't exist under, right, the accuracy of the law, right? So what we've been using and what become a norm, right, is allowing the companies to penalize us, even though that they're not lawfully correct. They're using our ignorance of the law to create a norm.
My God.
And what we're doing is educating ourselves and saying that I was never late based on the letter of the law in the first place. And now that I know that I'm going to fix my situation.
Come on. We've gotten so many late payments deleted. See, an educated consumer is a dangerous consumer. So we're not out here making up statements. We're not out here telling people to say, oh, I was never late. No. Question the way it was reported. The law says for it to exist, this must happen. So I'm going to address this with the consumer reporting agencies and the creditor. If you cannot produce the document to support the late payment, a late payment cannot exist. So when I tell people that a late payment only exists because you let it, is because you've never questioned the reporting of your payment as late. But when you call these crooked creditors, they're going to say, oh, you're late and we reported it. That's not what the law says. That's not what the law says. You can keep your opinion because I know what the law says. So it's either you're going to fix it or you're going to receive something in the mail via small claims or arbitration. Because under 15 U.S.C. 1681N, right, civil liability, a consumer can sue for damages. Like you can get paid for bad credit.
Now, I'm just read this to say a single late payment can lower a credit score by 90 to 100 points for somebody with a good credit score. So
that's actually inaccurate. I'm going to give you more context.
Then this one says that if you have a lower credit score, the impact may be less severe, but it can still hit you about 60 to 80 points.
All right, let me break down the point system for you. And I'm going to tell you why I said that that's a little bit inaccurate. Remember I told you about the 5 factors earlier: payment history, utilization, age of credit, mixture of credit, and new credit. Remember, we have what? 550 points, right? Late payment, our payment history is 35% of 550. It can affect you up to 192.5 points. The 35% is equal to 192.5 points. Where utilization is concerned, that is 165 points because it's 30%. 15% now, which is the age, that can affect you up to 82.5 points. Mixture of credit, which is 10%, gives you 55 points, and new credit, which is 10%, gives you 55 points. So a late payment the maximum amount of points you can lose from payment history is 192.5 points because that 35% only allocates for 192.5 points.
So how does this affect the relationship between the creditor and the bureau and you? So let's say that you're late on a payment, right? You send in a letter.
But then what is late?
Well, let's say that they said that you were late, right? They sent you a letter saying you got a late payment, which is their way, right, to get you to make payment, which I would imagine that there has to be a deep relationship between the bureaus and the creditors because this is the way that they're trying to install fear tactics to get people to make these payments. So if you send in a letter,
totally different angle.
So, all right, so if you send in a letter and you utilize consumer law, and you're like, no, the threats don't work. Get that out of here, right? I know my rights, right? And then they take it off. Now, does that affect the relationship that you have with the creditor?
All right, that's a very good question. So it can affect it. However, it's not supposed to by law You are the consumer. You're in charge, and your responsibility is making sure that your report is accurate. See, there's a law called Equal Credit Opportunity Act. If any creditor violates your rights, or if any creditor take adverse action against you because you exercise any right of the law that is described as discrimination, and there's a law that protects you, and you can sue them for that. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. But let's bring it back a little bit, because did you know that the whole concept of why they push late payment so much, the late payment itself is a business model?
Mm.
If a consumer is late, don't they get charged a late fee?
Mm.
All right. Wells Fargo got sued by the CFPB and the FTC, right? 3.7 billion for illegally applying mispayments to people's account.
Mm.
Hold on. For illegally repossessing people's homes. It's right there on the CFPB website. Just anybody can look this up. Wells Fargo sued 3.7 billion by CFPB. Look it up. The case law is right there. They misapplied payments and illegally repossessed vehicles. And in the case law, it says Wells Fargo repeated offenders.
So it says, according to a report by the CFPB, approximately 20% of U.S. consumers have at least one late payment recorded on their credit report. How many of those do you think are accurate? What percentage of that?
Accuracy, I'd say probably below 5%.
Mm.
Everything else that's there is for one, money making, because with late payments come late payment fees. Now, think of a company like Wells Fargo. The average late payment fee is between $25 and $35, right? Multiply that by 16 million consumers. It's a bag.
Mm-hmm.
So a $3.7 billion lawsuit, that is nothing. Late payment itself is a business model because they attached a fee to it. Bank of America, 200 million for, again, late payment fraud, for illegally withholding credit card perks to consumers, plus other things. So they've developed an internal business model of how they can make more money from the consumers. In our communities, in most communities, where Black and brown people are, you're going to see a check cashing, buy here, payday loan, multiple fast food, right? So now they know, done by research, that the average parent isn't home. So they have the tablets to grow the kids, and they have all kind of stuff going on there. So the parents are out now working. So now we're talking about living hand to mouth, right? And some of these people can't open up a bank account because of inaccurate information on their credit. So what? They go to these check cashing place that takes a fee, right? And we're talking about post-tax dollars now, They're barely making it. So after they've been taxed, they're going to get to a check cashing place, which is going to take money again, right? Now, why is the subprime market so successful? Because they've realized that because Black and brown people were miseducated about credit, they fall within a certain region between 500 and about 640. Subprime lending heaven, right? And then what happened to me, remember with my car, I was charged 18.9% interest rate. Well, for someone like you with an 800 or 850 keys, yeah, you're a great consumer, but the banks don't make money from you because you're more likely to pay off your debt. You're not the money maker. The money maker is the person with bad credit. Why? Because they can charge more for interest rates.
Mm.
So while you have an 800 and better, your interest rate is probably 3% or less. That's pennies. A consumer like me with my 500 or 600, I'm anywhere in double digits. So while you pay for your car once, the same car, if I get it, I pay for it twice.
Mm-hmm.
Then but the research also shows that consumers that have bad credit are more than likely not going to pay it off. So they're going to default at some point. That's okay because that risk has already been calculated. It's calculated in the finance charge. The 15 USC, truth in lending, 15 USC 1605, right? And it says the finance charge is the sum of all charges. But when you scroll down to A3 or A5, it's going to tell you that there's an insurance policy that is built into the finance charge. And this insurance policy protects the creditor in the event that the obligor defaults. So there's an insurance that protects them. So whatever line of credit that they issued out, the finance charge funds that insurance policy. So when the consumer defaults, they got paid. They got all the payments you already made. Right? They sell the account to a debt collector, they get paid again. They repossess the vehicle and sell it at an auction, they get paid again.
It's the money business.
So why would they want 800 plus people to get paid once when a consumer with bad credit can pay them 5 to 6 times? These are the things people don't talk about, but it is the fact. Right? People don't understand the finance charge and what's in there. What's covered by the finance charge. Down payments. You're not even supposed to do down payments when there's a finance charge involved, because it says that there is no cash comparable when a finance charge is involved. 15 USC 1605. Anybody can look it up. But because we don't know what we don't know, the people that know the things we don't know use the things that we don't know against us.
So they just get our down payment, and then what they take that as is just like a bonus?
Well, I don't know what they do with it, but I know right now I'm in the process of going back for my down payment. So I can't give you too much on that yet until I get the check.
Right.
Because I'm getting my down payment back. But the other thing about truth in lending is any violation of truth in lending is double the finance charge.
So, all right, so you go in, you go buy a car. Instead of giving a down payment, give a person the proper steps that they should do, right, when going to purchase a vehicle.
All right, so I can't tell him what to do. I can tell him what I did.
Okay.
So this is what I did, right? So there's 2 cars that I never put any down payment down on. There's one that I did, and I'm going back for it now. So what I did was I found out what their requirements were. So I had the credit to support the requirements.
The down payment doesn't go to the overall right payment of the car?
Well, how they do it, dealers are very tricky. So they can take it, they could subtract the down payment from the overall cost. That's something that they can do, but they have so many fees that's attached to it, it prompts it up anyway. But what I know is that truth in lending, 15 USC 1605 says there's no cash involved when there's a finance charge. And if you look at your retail installment contract, the box on the left, there's 2 boxes. It must be conspicuous than the other boxes. And one has a finance charge in it. That finance charge is the sum of all charges. So the doc fee, the title, like every fee that a dealership would ask you to pay, the finance charge covers it. You're not supposed to pay any fee. There's gap insurance already included, because in 15 USC 1605, it talks about insurance and premiums as well. Gap insurance is a premium. It's an insurance. So that is included. So I was able to get 2 cars off the lot, 0 out of pocket, because I met the standard. The standard was like having like a 740 credit score, but I had 800 at the time, so I was more than qualified. So I was able to leave with the car and not put anything down for it. 0 out of pocket, nothing. Just meet their requirements. But you have people with a 500 credit score that want to go take out a Mercedes-Benz. Like, bro, make it make sense. You're not ready for that yet.
So then when you go in there, should you, because I've heard you shouldn't get the financing from the dealer. You should go directly to the bank, get your finance, and then bring it to the dealer.
I'm going to give you both scenarios. Both can work out in your favor depending on what you want to do. So for the average person, I recommend getting your pre-approval, getting it from your bank, your credit union, or whatever. Go in there. That is actually an auto loan, because you got an auto loan pre-approval that you took there. When you go to the dealership and there's a retail installment contract, that's not an auto loan. It's a retail installment transaction. It's not an auto loan, right? But it's categorized on your credit as an auto loan. But you can dispute that later on and delete the account, but whatever. Now, when you go to a dealership and you don't have your pre-approval, they do something called shotgun, right? Where they send your information out to like 5 to 10 different car dealerships or banks to see who will get you approved. Now, this is one of the most amazing things that I found out. So each inquiry that you get on your credit, if there was no permissible purpose, you can get paid $1,000 as long as it's not tied to an open account. Like, dude.
All right, so I got 2 questions on that. I'm owed some money then. But number one, why do they take points when they run your credit?
So they take points because of how it's calculated. So the hit is like, but if they didn't have a way for you to say, slow your brakes down, people will just be applying for stuff every day. You get what I'm saying? So it's kind of a control mechanism. If you go out for lines of credit, hey, your points are dropping, maybe I want to back off for the next 6 months to a year. Because they've put so much money into marketing the credit score that subconsciously, as the score drops, people start freaking out. It's information that changed. It's not the fact that the points drop. Something changed. If it dropped, it means something negative happened. If it went up, something positive happened. Right? So it's more of a, you're going too fast, slow down. Because if there was no penalty, that's the word I wanted. If there was no penalty involved, everybody would be applying for private jets and God knows what. So they had to control the industry somehow, and FICO figured it out early on in the game.
But when they ran your credit score at the dealer, right, it takes how many days for it to hit?
All right. So it's going to hit immediately, right? You're going to get, if you have a credit monitoring, you're going to see all these different inquiries on there. However, inquiries within 30 to 45 days for an auto loan, student loan, and mortgages, even if it's 40 inquiries, it's counted as one, right? However, there's another side.
So it's within the time
Within
span.
a time frame, correct. So it shows that you're shopping for a rate and you're looking for the best possible rate. So that's a clause that protect consumers in that realm. But there's another side to it. 15 USC 1681 N A2 or 2B, right? And what that says is that if a person, and you know that a person means a corporation, if a corporation, right? TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, Capital One, Wells Fargo, whoever, these are corporations. Pull your consumer report knowingly without a permissible purpose. They are liable to that consumer for any actual damages sustained or $1,000, whichever is greater. So for each inquiry not tied to an open account, a consumer potentially can get $1,000 for it. So last night, what I did with my students, we are going back after inquiries. So what we're doing now is we're evaluating the consumer report. Inquiries not tied to open accounts, those are the inquiries you can get paid for, hard or soft. An inquiry is an inquiry. There's nothing in the law that speaks about.
So what's the difference between a soft and a hard inquiry?
Very good question. Soft inquiries happen when creditors want to see your, they're evaluating you, so to speak, right? If you have Amex, right? Amex does periodic pulls. And the reason why they're able to do that in the terms and condition, when you signed, you gave Amex the right to periodically pull your reports to evaluate your credit worthiness. So if at any point, let's say your credit dropped below their standards, Amex will close down all the cards. In your terms and agreement, you gave them that right. Now, there's an arbitration clause in there, but that's a whole nother story, me getting nerded out. But the inquiries, right? So if I go to 19 Keys Auto Dealership, right? And I go for a car, and 19 Keys Auto Dealership sends my report out to Daraine, Delevante dealership, XYZ dealership, all the other dealerships around our financing companies to see who will finance the deal. Well, I gave 19 Keys Auto Dealership permissible purpose, written permissible purpose. I didn't give anybody else. And the fact that I didn't get funded by any of them too, it also means that they procured my consumer report under false pretenses because they have an identification of me. They either possessed it, used it, or transferred an identification of me without a permissible purpose. That constitutes aggravated identity theft. Because if I didn't give you permission, you cannot pull my credit. That is law, right? So 15 USC 1681Q, obtaining consumer report under false pretenses. So that's punishable up to 2 years under Title 18. So when you go to 18 USC 1028A, it's going to tell you about aggravated identity theft, right? And it's going to tell you that if a person knowingly uses, transfers any identification of you without a permissible purpose, they are likely to be fined under Title 18 or spend up to 2 years in prison. You should see aggravated identity theft, 18 USC 1028A. So if it's identity theft, well, that speaks to the FCRA because the FCRA has a slot for identity theft, 15 USC 1681C2, blocking off information that came from identity theft. So now it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. So prove it and make it make sense. Well, if I request the permissible purpose document that gave them the right to pull my report and they don't possess it, that simply means they obtained my information under false pretenses because 15 USC 1681B2 says, in writing, a consumer must give written permission or written instructions for their credit for a consumer reporting agency to furnish a consumer report. So if I didn't give them written permission and they pulled it, someone used, transferred, possessed an identification of me and obtained my report under false pretenses. And that is what 15 USC 1681Q speaks about and 18 USC 1028A. So by knowing these two things, now I can prove that they didn't have a permissible purpose. That brings me back now to 15 USC 1681N under civil liability. So this is the part that I want you to find. 15 USC 1681N. And then when we go to N, not A, B. B is going to tell you about the liability for pulling a consumer report without a known permissible purpose. It should have that language there, right? And it says actual damages or $1,000, whichever is greater.
On damages, it says, well, it has three different. Actual damages, the liability party is responsible for actual damages sustained by the consumer as a result of failure. Then it goes to statutory and punitive. But I got it set up to where it's giving me bulletin points. It's not breaking down the whole thing.
So basically now, it's not, remember earlier, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove, right? So prove it and make it make sense. If I send in a dispute letter now to 19 Keys Auto Dealership, right? And I say, hey, I am requesting under Rule 1002. So Rule 1002 is requesting the original document. It's federal law. So I'm requesting the document that you claim that I gave you permission to pull my credit. If you cannot provide a document, I know now you pulled my report without permissible purpose.
So what I'm getting from you, number one, is teaching people how to understand and use the law, right? Because we talk a lot about financial literacy, but we don't talk a lot about legalese, right? And understanding the law, how to use the law, right? 71% of lawyers are white, right? Only 5% are black, right? So we are not a group that uses the law for our benefit. And mostly because we don't understand it, right? I think California is the home of the most lawsuits. People suing all the time, right, for different things. But when we look at the reality of America, how, you know, so many different things, like the rights that we have in this country are from civil rights, right? But we don't really talk a lot about commercial rights. We don't talk about consumer rights, right? Most people see themselves as a citizen, not a consumer, right? And so when you see yourself as a citizen, you're just owned by the country, right? You're owned by the corporation. But when you see yourself as a consumer, you understand that, oh, if I'm going to operate within this business, then I have rights on the relationship between me and this business. And I think what it is that's going to happen is that it has to be a trigger of a different mindset, right? Because most people see themselves as a powerless, right, person in the land. And it's like, no, you are transacting commerce in this land, right? This is a corporation. There's a CEO called the president, right? And in this same way, you know, if you go to a Target, right, you're a consumer, there's laws, right? They can't just do whatever they want to you. They can't just charge you anything, right? They can't just falsely market things to you. There are laws. And it's the same thing all throughout the United States of America. Right. And I think that's the shift that most people haven't got to. It's like, first of all, I said this earlier, I forgot what show I was on, but we was talking about how, you know, between finances and law, those are the two of the most important things that Black people need to learn.
Yes, I agree.
Most important. Because once you learn that, right, you learn literally the laws of the land and how to operate with them. And then you realize that somebody's right now mad looking at that credit score, not knowing something that they can't do, right? And it's like, okay, instead of being stuck in this emotion, in this cycle and having this stress, here's an outlet, right? Here's how you can fight back, right? Actually, this is how they actually did you wrong. That late fee, I remember when I was back in college and, you know, I only had 1 year, you feel me? But it's cool. You know what I'm saying? My little year counted, you feel me? But I remember in college and afterwards, you know, going to get some of them payday loans, which was the worst ever, because they charged phenomenal interest, right? And it was never on the principal amount. I remember getting all of the having my account being in the negative, right? And then being charged for my account being in negative. Well, I already don't have money.
There's a penalty
and
for
y'all
that
taking
too.
money I don't have.
Yep.
Number one, it's just what the banking system is just numbers. That money don't actually exist.
All right, so can I put a comma right there? I don't want you to lose your chain of thought. So right then and there, right, when you're negative, and if someone doesn't get the account positive, remember earlier I spoke about check systems? They send that information to check systems. Check systems is another consumer reporting agency, but they store banking information, banking relationship information. So when people get denied for a bank account, that's because there's negative information in check systems that is either inaccurate or was not updated. So that is why people turn to the payday loans, because they can't open up bank accounts because they're blocked in check systems. They don't know how to pull their report, dispute the negative item there, clean that up so when they go to the bank, they're good to go. I just wanted to make that point.
No, that's good, because I think that's something a lot of people can actually use right now, number one. Your account is in a negative. I think everybody should turn off overdraft fees. Number one, there's no reason to ever accrue overdraft fees. I understand, because once you do that, you're going to use it, right? So the point is to not have it on.
Correct.
Because if you use it, then they go charge you $30 to $40, right? Which is money you already don't have. And it's money that don't exist. Right? I think that's the bigger part of it, right? To you, it exists because it's a negative, it's a deficit in your account. But it's just the bank changing numbers, right? How does a negative $30 doesn't exist, right? It's not, it's not real. But they basically putting a debt on your account saying that, yo, you have negative $30. No, that's not reality.
And if you don't pay it, you're going to get penalized.
Exactly. More money. And then they keep throwing overdraft fees. You know, I was the type of person, I'd be on that phone with them for hours, you know, getting all my fees deleted.
But not everybody's like you.
Yeah. But it's like, that's what I want to put people in the action seat. You feel me? Like, what you just start breaking down all of these U.S. consumer laws, right? And you spin them off the top of your head, which means to me that you had to do a vast amount of research. The beautiful thing about, I imagine, what you do with your students is you research with them.
Correct.
Right? You send them down the rabbit hole to learn, right? And then you teach and guide them along the process when they want to learn more or do other things, and you give them your experience.
Correct.
Right? So they're not stuck. And I think that in America, if you consider yourself to be an American, I think one of the most American things to do is to learn the law.
I think so.
Now, I'm not constitutionally astute with all of the laws. I'm aware. I'm aware of what I don't know, right? I think that, there's a lot that I don't know, but I understand that, number one, we need to learn the Constitution better, right? We should read the Constitution, the Magna Carta, we should read the treaties, right? We should read all the commercial laws, we should read, and learn all of these different things. And, as a family, let's say that, because most people I'm not about to go through all of that. It feel me. I hear you, please, but I'm not about to be sitting there reading USC 666N9-2, trying to figure out how to get my rights together.
I'm glad you said that.
That's a difference between, a free man and a slave.
Here you go.
Right? A free man will learn.
Look at Django.
He would look at Frederick Douglass, Nat Turner. You feel me? We have heroes throughout time. If you were to study, that will tell you how they got their freedom. Frederick Douglass said, "Knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave."
You cannot unlearn.
That's the biggest truth in America if you follow it. It's just impossible to be a slave because you have the knowledge and you're a thinking man and woman. A thinking man and woman, right, is living. You're alive, right? That means that America has created, for every law, there's a loophole. Right? They had to, so that they wouldn't get caught up in their own laws. Right? Why wouldn't they create a loophole? Then they got their brothers and their families, sisters, aunts that's criminals. Right? So this is why Donald Trump can run for president, because they wait a minute, we not gonna say you can't run if you're a criminal, man. My uncle a criminal, man. You feel me? He been running this bootleg liquor her whole life. I want him to get opportunity too. So you got to remember who set up the laws and what for.
What for?
Right? And they set it up as, nepotism. They set it up so that their bloodline can win. And once you start to understand that, even though, you go to Dred Scott decision that was done in St. Louis that said that we 3/4 of a human being. So we know that it wasn't made for us.
Ain't that crazy?
Yeah. But that's where we get our revenge in today, by educating ourselves at the highest level. And ignorance is a choice today.
King.
Which means slavery is a choice today.
But most people hear this and now they get in their feelings.
They need to feel something.
The truth is the truth.
You can't be wrong and confident. No, you need to be insecure in your ignorance.
How many people
be confident in your truth
are willing to be uncomfortable with something that they've been fed all their life to believe? Now only find out that it's a lie. The whole credit system. You've been lied to about credit all your life.
I want at least one person in the family, in everybody's family, to at least learn this so they can do it for everybody.
Yes, that's the whole reason why I started. In the beginning, it was called the credit hero, right? And my thing was, how do you become the credit hero for your family?
Yeah.
Become that credit hero. Hosea 4:6.
Wish I had a damn credit hero. I'll buy you a cape. You know what I'm saying? You learn.
My people are destroyed because of a lack of information.
Right.
But if that is true, wouldn't the opposite also be true?
Right.
If my people are educated, they will not be destroyed.
And you got to understand this, is that, we black men, so we speak from a melanated position. But this goes to the whole entire poor class of America and middle class of America. They don't have this information, right? And here's one of the biggest things that they try to keep us away from. All of these dividing things that they've put in front of us is just so that we don't see reality for what it is, right? It is the people, and then it's the system, right? Those are the only two things that exist. But then what you do is the system says, wait, you Democrat, you Republican, you black, you white, you Jewish.
Categorized.
Right? Wait a minute, you rich, you poor. Right? You educated, you uneducated. Right? Wait a minute, you gay, you straight. Right? Wait a minute, you this, you got all of these different things. You white, you black, and it's like, wait a minute. Now we're not going to have a conversation, right, about what we have in common, because we're too busy bickering about what we have in difference. So now there's no revolution amongst the people because the people are divided because they have 1,000 titles and flags. So this is why America doesn't have any true patriotism anymore, because nobody knows what the country stands for.
But I heard,
and then most people don't understand the country anymore.
But I heard paying taxes is patriotism.
I don't know who told you that.
All right. So, Keys, you're about to get me started.
No, you already got started. You already got started. You've been going.
2% increase.
He talking about started.
A 2% increase on T-tax, right? Basically created the Boston Revolution, the Tea Party. 2%. And right now, people are taxed up to 90%, and they're sheep. Make it make sense.
Went crazy on 2%.
You started a whole war, whole war. But now you go to a job,
Dang.
you get paid a year worth of work. You gave the first 4 months for free.
And I
So-
heard they showed up as some of them showed up as Native Americans, which was their defiance to British, right? Saying that we're not Indian law. We are Native Americans. So
We're
they put
from
on the
here.
headdress and everything. And it's like, I visited, Shinnecock Nation. I went over there where they have sovereign land, right? And they literally are sovereign. They have their own system of government. They don't pay any taxes or anything. And it's like, I think you have to start there to understand North America, right? Because nobody ever says, yeah, I'm a North American. Nobody ever says that, right? We look at it, you say you're a U.S. citizen, right? Just the United States of America, right? That's the corporation. That's the incorporated version, right? But when you look at North America, now let's deal with this land that we own, right? What is the history of this land? Right? Why do the basketball teams are named after Native Americans, right? Why do we have these particular lines? Now, a lot of Native Americans sold it to some of the white men when they came over because they didn't understand the idea of selling land, that a man can own land. They thought it was crazy. It's like, man, you got $30? Come on, man. You want that? All right. This nigga tripping. They're like, you might as well buy the sky too. Right? So, but then, you get into this place where when you start to look at America and we start to think, okay, well, how was it formed? Right? And then for me, it goes back to understanding the Book of Doomsday. Right? And I talk about this often because the Book of Doomsday was done by Norman King, who came and conquered the land. And what he had realized, he said, because I'm a foreigner, I'm going to have to keep fighting in order to keep this land. And he said, I need a better system than this because I want generations to come to own this, right? He didn't want to have to keep fighting different opposing, right, tyrants that want to come and take the land. So he did a judgment on all the land, right? So he went in, everything from the cows, the birds, the police, the courthouses, your house. He write everything down on the list in the ledger. I want to see every single thing that's on my land and then put my name next to it. Right? And so what he did was he took possession and ownership over everything. Then he said, wait a minute, you are my loyal general, right? I like how you've been fighting in the war. Don't worry. I want to make you a landlord. You know what I'm saying? Don't even worry about it. But because I own the courts and the police, you do come under my jurisdiction though. Right? And you got to pay taxes, just small little taxes, but you got that. You feel me? You got that. Right? So now the king owns everything and nobody owns anything unless he give you a simple fee title, which allows you to have control, right? Which is why when you break it down, we got all these zoning issues. You can say you own stuff, but you own the rights above the land, not the actual land rights, right? There's all of these different things about America. Then you take that further and how did America get its land? Who gave it to us, right? The church, UK. Then you start seeing the real connections of America as a colony. Then you start looking at the treaties with Morocco. Then you start understanding the treaties with the Native Americans.
Who was the Moors?
And then but to bring that back, when you look at the Book of Doomsday, it was the most comprehensive, right, survey and judgment that had done at the time. And the rest of Europe was impressed. They like, what the hell bro just came up with? This was smart as hell. And they used that same template, right, to create modern United Kingdom, right? And for me, that same template is when you get the Magna Carta. They understood that it was not a war of space. It was a war of time, right? We need to conquer time. If we conquer a space, I'm on this block saying that this is mine, this radius in which you see, this is mine and I'm protected. No, how do we conquer time? In paperwork, right? So they use the power of the four corners in that paperwork, that's law, right? So when they sat down and I had this conversation with Rashad the other day, I'm like, bro, it was like young 30-year-olds and late, dudes in their late 20s that came, sat down and locked in for 60 days and wrote a constitution, right? They came up with a Magna Carta and they figured out a way that their bloodline can rule over time. And that's what paperwork does, right? It documents a format and a framework so that an institution creates rule of law to rule over time. So the pen becomes mightier than the sword.
Let's go.
Right? And as you are in America and you start to look at the history and unpeel the layers, you understand that we have been trying to fight with the sword, not understanding the power of the pen. Right? And then that's when you start to say, okay, if you go to any company to do your due diligence, you need to see the paperwork. Right? How's this company ran? What do they do? How do they make their money? Right? How is this set up? Right? Is it lawful? Is it legal? And that's what it is when you're looking at America's paperwork. Because if you're going to operate inside this corporation, right, and you're going to consume things, you're going to buy things, you're going to transact, you're going to live here, right, then you should start looking at the paperwork so that you can understand how to properly function in here, right? Because freedom is not something that's given, it's earned. You can't ask for your freedom. So even though Juneteenth, 1865, right, they told some groups of Native Americans that they were free, right? But a man can't tell you you free. You have to tell them you free, right? If you were a slave that died fighting for your freedom, you were free, right? Because at that moment you make a decision, you assert yourself to say, wait a minute, I am an original man. I am human. I am blood. I am flesh. I am of the land. This is the air, the seed. That's the sun. But the moment, it's a twofold thing. Because when I visit the Native American man, he told me something. He said, his mentor told him, I need you to become an attorney. He said, attorney? Man, I thought we don't operate with the law. I thought we sovereign. He said, no, not that kind of attorney. I need you to understand the laws of the universe, right? Because we don't operate within man's law. This is the reason we don't have to operate within man's law, because we operate within the universe. So it's like you use the consumer law when you're consuming, right? And you're doing things. And then at the same time, you have to understand that there's a higher law. And his higher law works in a way to where he said, you know, the president of the IRS came and he said that they was mad at him because he didn't pay taxes, right? And they had basically harassed him, was knocking on his door, and he sued the IRS and won, right? He showed me the paperwork and everything. And he said, you know, they wanted me to explain myself. And what he found out was, and what he was explaining to me, they said, you know, is this your home? Why don't you pay taxes here? He said, well, you know, I live here, right? I dwell here, right? I have many places that I live and sleep, right? And he asked, okay, why don't you think you have to pay taxes? And he said, well, you know, the sun sets in the west, right? The birds fly, right? And, you know, I'm a man that exists in nature, something of that. And basically what he was saying is that the moment that I start explaining myself in their law, I am in their law.
You
right?
got into jurisdiction.
But you have to understand my jurisdiction is not within your framework, right? I operate within man's law. In our law, we don't have those laws. So if I start working with you and explaining myself based on the conditions, you're going to win that every time. But if you play my game, right, with my maker, my creator has no such law on my land, right? So I'm going to lose if I'm playing by your rules. And for me, though, most people are ignorant, right? So the rules that they're playing by the law of ignorance.
Correct.
What I don't know can hurt me, right? And what you don't know can be used against you. So you have to learn which laws that you want to use throughout the world in order to win.
Correct.
So when you're dealing with poverty and you're dealing with a situation, you say, okay, the first thing you should deal with is what are the laws that I can use? When you're dealing with a sick mentality and you want to bring something into reality, you think about the law of attraction, the law of action, the law of manifestation, right? The law of work, the law of power. And there is a law for everything in the life.
Correct.
Right? And so whether it's man's law or universal law, you have to learn how to use both to your benefit.
Correct.
And then that will allow you to win in any situation and circumstance.
Let's go. Dude. So every negative item you can think of on your credit, there's a specific. So when you said that just now, I'm like, yo, like you're really hitting the points. Every negative item on a consumer report, there's a specific law that speaks to it. The reason why people don't get ahead is because of what you said earlier. Who wants to learn consumer law? I want a microwave fix. I don't want to learn anything. But if you don't know the things you don't know, you will always be taken advantage of. But then people were told to believe that if you don't have letters behind your name, you're not credible. If you don't have a MBA or a PhD, all of these letters, right? Because these letters make you smart. That's the society that we live in. That's why they say go to school, get a job, get a White House with a picket fence 2.5 kids. But then you go in back to the same thing about taxes. For 1 year, 4 months out of the year is free because you're in a 30 to 40% tax bracket, which means your paycheck for the entire year, the first 3 to 5 months were given to the government. So you actually kept what's left. But then after those post-tax dollars, you're being taxed again on post-tax dollars. You're already taxed already, you know. But now you're taxed again to buy food, to buy gas, to buy a home. Everything else you're taxed on. You even get taxed when you die. So the same cycle of $1 gets taxed, about 80% of that dollar gets taxed. How are you supposed to build wealth and survive off of the 20 cents left off of that dollar? You can't. That's why it's the carrot in front of the donkey. He keeps going, think he's going to get it. You keep spinning on the hamster wheel. You're putting out so much effort because you're doing so much not to get fired, and they're paying you so much for you not to quit. So people say, oh, I just want to be comfortable. I just want to be comfortable. I don't want to be rich. Well, what does that even mean? What does being comfortable mean? Am I saying that I'm okay with depending on a system that was not designed for me to take care of me? But the same system is telling me to work for 40 years and they keep pushing up the age of retirement. What am I going to do at 75, 76 on a pension? I worked all my good years, everything, overtime, just trying to get ahead. But at the same time, the money that we are going to get in 40 years, the promise in 40 years, never account for inflation.
So, not to cut your wisdom, but for the people that's listened to this time that we've had in this span of conversation, they've learned a lot, and they're going to have to rewind a lot of this.
It's one of those episodes.
Take some notes, gather their quotes. I want you to tell me, how can they, learn from you, right? Because you seem to have done the research, right? And you have the knowledge, right? How do you work with people? What can they learn from you, right? How can they get connected to you?
All right. So for those of you that want to know more about me, you can visit DaraineDelevante.com. That's my official website, DaraineDelevante.com. I'm on all social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Daraine Delevante. So that's DaraineDelevante. So you can find me on all of them. And I'm actually launching a community where it's time to take it to the masses, where each one teach one and becoming the credit hero, not only for yourself, but your family. And I'm doing that through a school community that I'm launching very soon. So there's ways that people can get in contact with me. I have a university that I mentor. I have about 300 students in there right now that I'm mentoring, that they are using consumer law every day to repair, rebuild, restore their own credit. And then the community now will open that wider to more people, so more people have access. So the school community is just a text number. They just text community, right? And they'll get that going.
I always say it like this. Like if I'm looking at this and I'm examining the value, I like the credit hero. Because like I said, there's somebody in every family, right? Hood, community, whatever it is, learn this, teach it to others, right? That's the goal. Because in America, you have so many people that are in debt. Credit debt is sky high right now. There's people that's dealing with delinquencies, late payments, right? And it's setting them up for this financial cycle of desperation and trauma that becomes very hard to get out of.
Correct.
And I think that, by learning this information, taking the hours, however much time that you're going to need, you're giving yourself a skill set, number one, right? And you're learning something that 90% of people do not know, right? Which means that you can be of value to 90% of the people. And I don't think that this market is going to slow down anytime soon. It's going to continue to get worse because people are hopefully ignorant. So learn from this, man. Take the information, be integrable, and execute. And I want to thank you for your time because I learned a lot. You understand me? And I want to sit down with you and learn even more about it, because you remind me on the depth of study of things that I need to go into. Just sitting down, learning consumer law and the direct application that it has. And I think that's the power. It's like law is lawful. There's an application to it.
There's
It's
an
not just
application
there,
process.
right? It's on the paper and it may sit there, but once you breathe life into it by using it, and then you can animate it, and then it makes you more powerful, right? And I think that is a very dope thing, because anybody can be sitting at home and just start reading, right? And start learning. And then, 3-6 months later, they become an expert on it, right? And now they're able to teach. Now they're able to create content. Now they're able to help others,
Correct.
Which for me is the most important thing. I look at good influence as good leadership. Right. And so if you can create an impact where we need people in all different categories, right? You have the financial literacy space, you have the economic space, you got the wealth building space, whatever it may be. We need more people who are knowledgeable, right? That can have transferable skills, that can create direct impact, so that knowledge, because wealth is really the knowledge that you pass on, not just the physical assets.
I agree.
Like, I wish I would have got this as a child and I just understood this, right? To where it's just in my mind. So I feel like parents should definitely be the ones who consume this type of information.
I believe so.
Right? Because their children are the consumers of the future.
Correct.
And the more that we educate the consumers, right, the less we become ignorant consumers, because we know Black Americans are the biggest consumers of America.
Biggest consumers.
So we should know consumer law more than anybody.
I think I 100% agree with you. And instead of doing movies on Friday nights with the family, let's have a financial literacy gathering. Go play Monopoly. Go pay the cash flow. Like, do things that move the needle further.
Yes, sir.
And I think when we look at the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts, we can see how two families that got super rich almost over 100 years ago, the difference in education in the family, how one family is still predominantly one of the richest in America versus the other one that is they just have a name. And until we become educated and we start educating our own, then we'll start seeing the revolution. Because you said it earlier, an educated man can never be a slave. Let's wake up. But for most people, they have to knock their heads a few times before they realize that enough is enough.
Yes, sir.
Hearing it alone is not enough, because it doesn't drive that spark until they're in a bind and they're like, yo, I remember that 19 Keys episode. You know what? Let me go back and find it, because now that fire has been lit and it's time for me to take action. So nothing will happen until action is taken, just like a seed. Every seed has a tree inside of it, but if that seed isn't planted, there will be no tree.
This is a fact.
So my challenge to everyone out there is, are we going to let the garden of our mind be overrun with weeds? Or are we going to clean those out and plant the seeds that we want to grow so we can have a future that we can reap the benefits from?
And that's 19 minutes for 19 keys. Peace, family. 19 keys tapping in. Let me ask you a question. How is your credit? It really represents your habits and the way that you move throughout this world and your understanding of the game. What is the game? It's a game of rules, of secrets, of how to move through private, through public. It's a game to how to navigate the ins and outs so that you can have financial success. So I want to be at the Credit Summit with Daraine Delevante in October from 11th to the 13th. And I need you to pull up, because I want you to play the game. As you start learning how to use the credit, you start learning how to build wealth. The game was played for those who understand it. Come through, understand it. And also make sure that you join High Level Club. We're going to have Daraine, which is one of the best credit people out there that can give you the ins and outs of the game, speaking to our community for free. Make sure that you comment credit below so that you can join. And I'll see you in Atlanta. Peace to the family. Get your credit right so you can get your life right.
Are we low level or high level?